Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. So, I kind of want to expand on a talk that I gave about my son moving out in my, video about 4 videos ago that went in the 110th journey of the series, 110th edition of the Journey series, I believe. And I talked about it here, in my regular videos. I included the audio. Um, you have to have goals in life. You have to have some reason to get up in the morning. And I enjoy making these videos. Like, there's this great couple of funny things. I'm going to lead with this thing with Fox News. Maybe not lead with it, but it's the kind of lead story. There's a dude at Fox News saying Ghislaine Maxwell completely vindicated Trump, and it's great. And some of the Trumpers will buy into it, right? And these things that I enjoy, talking about how effed up the news is and all these things, and how screwed we are. In these videos, I enjoy doing it to whatever extent. But it's a dying. My audience is shrinking, and the algorithms are out to get me. And I I've done everything that I know how to do. Whatever's on me for that. Being just telling the truth in a way that's off-putting to people. Of course, I could say things in a way, and even if I did that, I don't think that would matter because the algorithms are, the algorithms, because you have to get your stuff in front of new people. YouTube has to recommend your videos to people. That's the one. And if I go to another platform, how does that work there, in terms of, I went to Rumble and I was getting 200 views on my videos, so it's just, pointless. Like, that's not enough, in terms of, it's basically starting from scratch. And then whatever is going on Spotify, which is non-existent. And so, like, it doesn't matter. Like, it just, no matter what I say or how I say it, it's not getting out there in front of people. There's millions of, billions of people looking for content, and it's how this content is given to them. That's how this thing works, right? But as far as those things go, when you're in the stage of life that I am, you're now transitioning. Like, I'm in the transitionary period of preparing for my body. I have my teeth issue now. I have bone loss and gum disease or whatever it is. That is not really bothering me today, but it's been there, and if they looked at other parts of my body, if I went to doctors and got, examined, there'll be deterioration in my internal organs and things like this, right? I'm in the death process. It's not, I'm going to have some health issues down the road. I have some minor ones now. I feel mostly pretty good. But I'm, doing my best to preserve what I have and to have, good days and days of where I, have energy. And, I have to get up and do farm work and deal with things. We had an interesting thing happened. We have these 13 chicks, 3 guinea fowl, and 10 chickens, baby chicks, and they're, various breeds. And we have a couple of these little bantam chicks, which my wife likes very specifically. They're little white chicks that are about, they still look like they're day-old chicks. They're not, the guinea grow really fast. They're huge. And then all these different breeds of chicks are, different sizes. And one of the guinea fowl we had, it just, like 2 weeks ago or so, 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, it was so hot out. I had to bring it in the house, so we had to cool it down a little bit. And it seems to be getting picked on by the other guinea fowl or the other whatever. And it wasn't like, totally in the group. And it kind of rematriculated. But I was laying down to take a nap, probably around 2 in the afternoon. And I had a short window which I could do that. And I hear this, the windows open, and it's nice out there. I try to get fresh air when I can, and there was a sound outside my window, and I knew it was a guinea fowl because they're particularly loud. And I opened the screen. I looked down, and there it was, um, right below my window. And I had to. And it was far away from the other chicks. The other chicks are on the other side of the yard, and it's looking for the other chicks. And there's a lot of overgrowth around the house in areas, like just it's not an area you can walk through. There's a little bit of poison ivy in places, which I try to get to, but whatever. Um, and I had to cut a bunch of stuff down, and I finally caught the thing. I had a net, like it was just, and I brought it back, and I don't know, a few days later, then maybe the next day or the day after, and probably the day after, there's some white feathers, like one of the little bantams, and there's a pile of white feathers. And and there was a bantam that we found out was missing at the end of the day when they were going back into the coop. And there was the guinea fowl was missing, the one that was kind of stupid. Like there's no reason for it to be on the other side of the yard. Like that's just stupid. Like it was just freshly out. It was like the first day it was out. It lost the rest of the chicks and wandered into like the worst part. The chickens will pick on them. The bigger birds will pick on them. That's full-grown chickens, and it's just wandering around. And we have a neighbor's cat that I haven't seen in about 6 months or so. I don't know if the neighbors even had cats anymore, but he sometimes used to come into our yard. And it's just in there, it's being loud and like making a spectacle of itself. And it already had some health issues, and now that bird's gone. And we're trying to think about maybe that there's a cat that the neighbor came in. There's a pile of white feathers, so that might indicate a bird, but that was in like the middle of the wood, like a wooded area. And so we're trying to figure out what killed the chickens, right? What killed these these chicks, because now we have to, protect them. So I cleared a big area around where there's like some, overgrowth and some, dead branches and things I'd put around there to keep the chicks from wandering, too far away from the hen house. The last batch that we had. But now those branches are all dry now. So I'm clearing out the yard. And my wife and I had been noticing this kestrel. Kestrels are an amazing bird of prey. They have the ability to see when the sun hits mouse urine. It shows ultraviolet light, so it can see ultraviolet lines of reflection of the urine and follow those urine tracks back to where the mouse is. I mean, an amazing gift. They hover around it. And so when we go walking in our pasture area, we see this kestrel. And, so I'm clearing out this area, trying to think if there's some kind of predator in there, maybe a rat or, I was looking up that squirrels will occasionally eat, they could eat a chick, occasionally eat meat, these animals that are not known for that. Because I couldn't figure out what kind of predator we have. It wasn't a raccoon. They don't come out during the day. There's a lot of animals that don't come out during the day, mostly. And I'm doing this, and the kestrel, when we walk around the pasture, it flies away when we get close. But my tractor was right next to the coop, so the kestrel probably didn't see me. It flew over me. It flew over my head by 10 feet and landed right next to where the chicks were. So I knew it was the kestrel, right? It was like one of these things. I talked about this. Like you're trying to figure something out. It's kind of good to know what kind of predator it is. Is it an aerial predator? And, and the information came, and then we made adjustments to keep the kestrel from eating more of the chicks, right? And we're more aware of it. We've had, sometimes we have a hawk that would go in the chicken house. It would be inside there sitting on the roost, big Cooper hawk. And, we'd scare it out of there, and then it just wouldn't come back. We'd let it know we're out there and, whatever. And then it just says, all right, because these aerial predators are not hurting for food sources. And if, they realize there's some threat to when the dogs are out, they're, whatever it might be, there's some threat to them. They're like, well, we'll just go to more, less difficult prey, right? To less difficult area. Although, chickens are fairly easy to catch when they're walking around in plain sight in the in the lawn eating grass. And I'm also saying that because there's things like I shared that story about my ex-girlfriend getting an abortion, me just knowing, like I just knew. Like sometimes you just know with limited information, you just know something. And it was, the kestrel was obviously, like I didn't see it, kill the bird, but it's clearly coming back, to an area that wasn't the chicken coop is surrounded by a broken down old barn. This is our secondary coop that we keep our chicks in. And it has a bunch of like trees around it. It's not an easily accessible area, but the Cooper's hawk came right there because it knew it had eaten something there the day before, and he was, and there was other ones there, right? Like there was 10 more chicks to go, so or whatever it is, 12 more chicks to go. So 11, I guess 11 more chicks to go now. I don't know. It was 13, yeah, 13 to 11. So I have these, daily chores to do, and I like making the videos and these things, but overall, there's no. I don't have any like goals about. I don't care if I get a million subscribers. At one point, I would have liked that, but in terms of the major message of this channel, which is preparing for a collapsing future by connecting to the divinity within you, there aren't many takers. Like I could have a million subscribers and regular 20,000 to 50,000 views. And, I mean, it's not up to me what people do with the information that I give to them. The goal of this system, the goal of this channel and the Sajmarg meditation and these things. And if people aren't going to gravitate to it, they're not going to do it. And that's fine. But, there is, with my son moving out, and I, had it's definitely the energy has shifted for the better in the house, and it's simpler, and then it's just an accomplishment, something that you have to accomplish as a parent, that your kids go out and start living their own lives, and there's whatever inner sadness I felt, and maybe there's still some there, and just the failure of the family, but I've known for a while, and this is sort of the final nail in the coffin, that my kids are not going to continue the work that I do, right? There's a time where the kids used to come and help me and would want to help me do farm stuff. So when we first had the homestead and the kids were young, there's times where every one of the kids and all the kids together were helping to build straw bale houses and straw bale chicken shack, chicken place for the chickens to live, a straw bale milk barn, to fix the fencing and put the fencing in, to build an earth oven. I mean, there's things we all did together. It was fun, and it was like this family thing. And the kids were learning skills and developing and helping with things. And then there were the farm chores they were doing when they learned to milk the cow and doing all those things, right? And then going to spiritual gatherings, going to India, them starting the meditation, and maybe looking at some of the literature and some of the things, and that they were going to be into this. Like they thought that they were going to like do the meditation. I mean, I don't know. They didn't tell me otherwise. Whatever their issues they had, and it didn't take. They didn't stick with the meditation. There was nothing there. In fact, they rebelled against it. They rebelled against the truther stuff. They all had their issues with the different things. The family, they all had their preferences. And then, they didn't want to do any of the work or do the intergenerational family farm. That was part of the goal. And they didn't, the family fell apart. And it was, it was just understandable. But I know that this, I'm not passing this down to them. I do pass down information here. And then there's a gratefulness meditation thing where people are able to do the meditation. And it's good. And I'm glad that people are able to access it. And some people really enjoy it and are benefiting from it. And they're reading the literature and they're, some of them quote the literature to me or send me literature, and they're into it, and people listen to me talk about it here, even if they don't do the meditation. Oh, that's great. There's something there. It's not nothing. When you're a preceptor, you give these face-to-face sittings, and you see the progress of these practitioners of the system, what are called abhyasis, aspirants. you see that their internal world is changing, and you talk to them, and you can see there's a difference. You see the growth in the spiritual system. But I don't have that because we don't have people who are, getting face-to-face sittings and these things, and so it's limited, and I don't get much of a feedback loop other than comments from people, and people saying that they're benefiting, which is great, and I'm happy for it, but it's not the same as these other things. But what I'm saying is I'm in the stage of completing things and whatever, and I still have some more work to do, but there's also the turning the stuff over to the next generation. Like, that's what has to happen as you get older, and there's just nothing there, right? Because it's not that there's nothing there, it's just the failure of the dodgy Gratefullness bullshit thing he did and turning it into a cult, him being a piece of shit. And it's, kind of a failure of humanity. Human beings not being able to rise up to something that's so great as the Sage Mark meditation. Because, we're materialistic. People are materialistic. And so people dabble in spirituality. They have two wings. You have a material wing and a spiritual wing. You have a soul and you have an ego. And people are most people are about 99 to 100% ego. They're in the 90s. And then some people are 80% ego or 70% ego. And, their egos, they might be good people, but they're materialistic. I don't want to say just ego, but they're focused on their material side. That they don't think about, they spend little effort on their spiritual world, and they don't develop their internal world, don't even like to look inside because they're scared of what they might see, both the good and the bad. And so, I know all that stuff now. Like, it's just there. Like the tendencies, it's like working with alcoholics or working with sex offenders or working with, any population that has some addictive, shameful kind of, negative behaviors that are, that they're not willing to part with. They're not willing to, it's just heavy, there's just heavy material deviance. And I see that now with humanity, that it's just, the Trumpers and all these people. Just on the merits of my success of telling you what's going to happen and why it's happening and what's going to happen in the future, I'm not, I don't know what the percentile is, but it's in the 90%. Things go exactly the way they say it go. They say they're going to go. And people don't listen. Like, I was one of the few truthers. It's called bullshit on Trump's fake assassination attempt. And now that's playing out now how he, Trump is the exact opposite of a Republican. He wants the government in everybody's business. He's going to people's houses and to personally, the stuff with John Bolton and these other people he's going to be doing this with. He's going on a vindictive tour, a vindictive-thon, going after these people, revenge tour. And, his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, all these things. And I have been spot on about who Trump was from the beginning. Again, thinking it was funny in the beginning because he was so gross and such an out-and-out demon who was not hiding in his Twitter things. And it was funny. It was funny and it was kind of interesting. But now, it's bad. And overall, the system can't be saved, and things I say about it. And if people would try spirituality and not try it, but put real effort into it, they would find that there's so many benefits. It's like a miracle of, transformation. And life becomes something better. But I know people just won't do it. So, the algorithm's against me, and human nature is against this channel. And people are, want to bury their head in the sand. People don't really want the truth, whatever it is. And, the stuff with the Gratefullness meditation, all that. And, it's hard for anything to move forward. And then being able to pass this stuff on to other people, the next generation. And, they're just not, they're so lost. We're dealing with the collapsing civilization. So, I have goals, and I have work. I don't want to say the goals are, kind of out of reach in terms of unlikely and not even real, like, concrete goals, where I'm open to expanding, doing gatherings if that was something that could happen, but probably won't. These things, right? And, I would like the channel to grow instead of shrink, and these things, but I just don't care about it anymore because it's just, it's a lost cause. Like right now, humanity's a lost cause. Something has to change, but as long as things are going the way they are, people are just going to go in the same direction. It's like people who are eating, you know, um, unhealthy food and eating carcinogens and things that are bad for them. If you try to tell them about it, just like you try to tell the sheeple about truth or stuff, they just keep on eating the poison. People just keep on devouring poison, and I'm talking more about the content than the physical food and medicines, which are poisonous. The pharmaceuticals, they list the side effects, and people take it anyway. I was watching Netflix did a thing on that show, The Biggest Loser, and they had these people. There's a New York Post article where these people who had lost hundreds of pounds, like former winners of the show, and they took 14 people, and all of them had gained the weight back. And they wrote an article. This was years and years ago. When the show was in its heyday, it was a very popular show. And the only kind of neat part of the show is when they bring a doc. I've watched some of a couple seasons. Like I don't have much of a memory of it, but they bring these doctors in, and the doctors would tell these people, "This is what's happening to your internal organs. This is what's happening." They go through their body fat, and how it's going to reduce their life, right? And the people all kind of know that, and then but all the people gained the weight back. And the article, without really being scientific, talked about how the show was hurting people's metabolism, that their metabolism had been damaged by the rapid weight loss. But it was more likely that their metabolism had been damaged by their obesity, and it couldn't recover, so they were stuck. No matter how much they exercised and no matter how much they starved themselves, their metabolism was so slow because of getting so obese. And the end of the show, they were talking about Ozempic, right? Like it's the new Biggest Loser, and some of the former contestants were on the. It's a gross show. The show was kind of weird and gross. It was. I'm not saying that there was some good things in the show, but whatever success they had in helping people lose weight, it didn't take. It wasn't a method to do it. And they said that back then, when the show was in the heyday, that there was something like, I don't know, 20%, 30% obesity in adults, and now it's 45, right? The epitome of toiling. Be 45% of the fucking country is obese in adults. Of course, we know about child obesity, and we know what Ozempic is going to do to people with the side effects and, that all thing. And so America, I mean, think about that, right? Like these people are just wrecked and incapable of being healthy, like so many Americans. And no one wants the truth. No one wants to know what's good for them. People just don't want it. They just want to eat the poison. They just do. That's it. They want to fucking stick the poison in their fucking ghoul holes, whether it's food or drugs or content and bad ideas or Trump and, whatever it might be, or the religion and, whatever the stuff that's hurting them, right? That Pearl Jam song, Daughter, about sexual abuse, where there's a line, she holds the hand that holds her down, which is a great metaphor for a great, a line about abuse. And, these majority of people hold the hand that holds them down. They just want to go forward into the fucking abyss of abuse and mistreatment and lies and, the way that they've been, I mean, for-profit medicine that, where they go to the doctor and they just keep on getting sicker, right? Like just all these things where they, you're a commodity and you're being used in every possible way. And so like there's no way forward with it. I'm not depressed about it. Like I said, I have my, like the personal goal, and I like completing homesteads and doing the maintenance around the homestead and growing food, and my wife and I enjoy those things. And, we go for walks and exercise and are trying to preserve our health to whatever extent. But there isn't much positivity about where the world is going. For my generation, what we're going to leave behind, even if we're trying to do something like create a pocket of the future, who's going to inhabit it, right? Like, who could we have? I mean, there's just nothing. There's nobody, right? There's just people are going to walk into the FEMA camps and go to their Agenda 30 housing, and they're just. I mean, there's fringe people, a few people here or there, but it's kind of a losing cause at this point. It may shift at a time with. It just depends on what people are going to do with the collapse, and so I'm kind of aware of that. Like, if not, I don't have an emotional reaction. I guess sometimes if I thought about it, it'd be depressing. But like I said, I have my work in front of me, like the things I have to do on a daily basis, and I just keep on doing those things and not worrying about the results. That was one of the teachings of Sajmark's system, that you do the work, and the work is yours, and the results are God's. But anyways, let's get into it here. So I saw this on Fox News. I guess this video was recommended to me. The video is not adding up. Speculation surrounding Maxwell's latest claims. The president was never inappropriate with anybody in the times that I was with him. He was a gentleman in all respects. Nobody would call Trump a gentleman. He's a rude motherfucker, right? But here, let's get into it here.
All right, now let's broaden this conversation out. Joining me to do so is former CIA analyst Buck Sexton. He's a nationally syndicated radio host with the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show, and nationally syndicated political reporter Selena Zito. Also, we have with us Fox News contributor Jason Chaffetz. Let's take what we've heard so far, Buck, and tell me what you make of what she has to say about President.
Look at this fucking guy's hair. This is an ex-CIA guy, so he's programmed to lie and put out disinformation and psychological operations. So he works for the CIA. And he's considered credible on Fox News with all the people who are opposed to the three-letter organizations.
Trump, about the client list, about Bill Clinton.
Well, I think she's largely affirming what is already known and not really advancing the knowledge of the case at all, which is unsurprising if you look at the motivations that she would have at this point. But first, in terms of what is known and solidifying what is known, President Trump did absolutely nothing wrong. There's no evidence. There's no indication. There's nothing whatsoever to suggest that President Trump ever did anything wrong with regard to all of this. So,
holy shit. Holy shit. Like, this is what how fucking dumb are their viewers? That would be something that this guy's coming in and saying this, because they're doing something wrong in this case would be not being a superhero that is here to get rid of the pedophiles, which is what the Trumpers, many of them, thought that the Trump administration was going to do. Like, not doing anything wrong was being best buddies with a pedophile who Trump said liked young girls and said he liked to party, and spending lots of time with him and, being called besties. I mean, like, multiple people. Jeffrey Epstein's brother and Trump's former employee that was, like Trump's, like almost like his secretary. Like a guy that was in charge of the Trump organization and was like one of Trump's like handlers, said they spent so much time together that he had to encourage Trump to spend less time with Epstein because he thought he was a bad influence, right? So Trump knew Jeffrey Epstein was doing what he was doing. Like she tried to make it like, well, they would, Jeffrey Epstein would go off and get a massage from an underage girl, and Trump and the rest of the guys they're traveling together. They're hanging, and Epstein would go get a massage, and Trump and other people would go to church, right? Like, that was some of the bullshit she was saying, right? But he's complicit. That's why they did this document dump on a Friday, and now it's coming back around to Monday, and he's guilty as fuck, right? Like, they've tried to bury the story. And they're trying to say there's nothing here. So let's come back to this. I want to play that again, right? That whole little thing where he started talking about that CIA guy with the hair. Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were friends, and this is a great moment here in the interview. Before you get back to the interview, I'm editing. I just noticed this picture, maybe the gayest picture of all time. Right? It looks like what they're going to be in Grease 4. Jeffrey Epstein on a motorcycle with Ghislaine Bab Maxwell. I mean, just, these people are always, they're very strange, right? Wealth does not make people less strange. Exorbitant amount of wealth, the more wealth makes you stranger, right? And that's clearly happened here. All right, let's go back to the interview.
You've seen there's photographs, public photographs of Mr. Epstein and President Trump together.
Yes.
And there's photographs of, I think you're in some of the photographs as well. Those all appear to be social.
This guy's talking to her. He's not grilling her and treating her like how would the Trumpers want this guy to talk to her? Todd Blanchett. Todd Blanche. How would he, how would they want Ghislaine Maxwell to be handled? The majority of Americans. This is a woman who recruited young girls to be sexually abused by this creepy motherfucker, and groomed them and trained them, and told them what they want, what Jeffrey liked, and telling them what Jeffrey wants you to do, all these things, and preparing these people for other. She's obviously intelligence agents. These her dad and Mossad, whatever they have connections, right? And she's with Jeffrey Epstein, acting like his wife. Like they're a couple. They would go to like dinner parties together, like as a couple. They hung out with these rich people as a couple, even though she's, they're not sexually involved because they have these others, she has this other role with these girls, right? And so she is a demon, and in the, people who are obsessed with Jeffrey Epstein and the QBs and the Pizzagate people, all these people that are, want to see justice done, and these elite people go to jail and be held accountable for their freaking deviant behaviors. And this guy's talking to her like she's like a friend, and he's trying to help her out, like very nice. Just the tone of the whole thing, right? And they know that there are pictures of Trump and Jeffrey Epstein together. So what's the best way to make it sound like it's okay? To make it like a picture where, you're a famous person, you're going out, and somebody you barely know, these meet and greets, comes up to you and you take a photo with them. Like all the people out there that have pictures of them and Trump together. All the people that are out there that show, hey, look, I met Donald Trump. Like all those people, right? But that's not the case. Like they were fucking buddies. They were hanging out. The one video they have. And they were socializing in this way, right? So it's just
settings.
Yes, that's my memory. If there were social settings, I don't know Epstein's. If he had whatever the nature of the president's friendship, if you will, or however you want to define that with Epstein, I was never witness.
Friendship. They were friends. And how do you be friends with these two notorious pedophiles? And they were friends. There's no doubt about these. They were friends. And friends that knew enough about each other, where Trump was even commenting on Jeffrey Epstein liking young girls. Trump incriminated himself. He likes them on the young side. And Trump was inspecting 18, 19-year-old girls, 17-year-old girls, 16-year-old girls, walking in their dressing room, hiring young girls, which I showed the video clip in my last two videos, hiring young girls based in their looks, and then saying like it was a temptation. Have this young 16, 17-year-old girl working for him that he was attracted to. He was attracted to his daughter. He was attracted to young women. He wanted to inspect them walking in there, grab them by the pussy, these kind of things. This is what Trump was. That's this guy that, he had a sexual addiction like Jeffrey Epstein in whatever way. And not in a consensual way, right? Not in a way that, in a way that he has power over them. Right, that they're there to service him and pleasure him. Like this is Trump's attitude. But they're friends. And she's like, whatever you want to define it as, right? Like, let's listen to that part again. Whatever you want to define that as, what do you want to call them, friends? I don't know. What do you want to call them here?
Those all appear to be social settings.
Yes. That's my memory. There was social settings.
She's leading it, right? Because here they are at a party of people. You know how you don't know everybody at the party, like social settings, right? They try to want to make this social settings, and friendship is like these people who don't really know each other that well. These rich people that don't spend time, like they're not neighbors. They don't get into each other's lives or business. They're rich people that go, they go to a benefit, or they go to a charity event, or they go to a ball, or whatever it is, a dinner party. But they don't really. Trump didn't really know Jeffrey Epstein that well. I mean, it was Prince Andrew said he didn't know Jeffrey Epstein. He knew Ghislaine, that he was good friends with Ghislaine, but didn't know Epstein. I knew him through Ghislaine. Well, that was what Prince Andrew's excuse was, right?
I don't know Epstein's, if he had, whatever the nature of the president's friendship, if you will, or however you want to define that with Epstein.
Yeah, how do you want me to define? I want a pardon. So how do you want to define? What do you want me to say here? You want to call it a friendship? A social friendship where, they attend to social events, but they barely know each other. Like, Trump's a gentleman, and a good guy, and a kind man, and he's just out there, and he's friends with lots of people, and they just they both have money, and they don't know. Epstein would go off and do his thing, and Trump would go do saintly work and pray to God and go to church, and Jeffrey Epstein was doing abusive things, but they Trump didn't know about that part.
I was never witness. I think they were friendly, like people are in social settings. I don't think they were close friends, or I certainly never witnessed the president.
They were friends.
In any of, I don't recall ever seeing him in his house, for instance. I actually never saw the president in any type of massage setting. I never witnessed.
Never witnessed that. No, the massage. There's a massage setting, and President Trump didn't know about that. He didn't know. He didn't know about it. This is why Trump is hiding all this stuff, right? Because if his name was in there a lot, which it is, because he hung out with Jeffrey Epstein, he was on the plane. They were good friends. They were close friends. They were close friends until Jeffrey Epstein got busted, and Trump does what he always does, and he's a disloyal piece of shit, and he throws people under the bus. See, they were close friends until Jeffrey Epstein got suicided, in air quotes, under the Trump administration. When Trump was president, Jeffrey Epstein was killed, and Trump was president. They were there. They weren't close friends then. You used to be close friends, but she wants to be close friends with Trump. Trump said he'd wish her well, Ghislaine Maxwell, and now she's already benefited from this interview. She has been given something, which is she's in a less, she was already in minimum security prison. Now she's in a camp. She's in a much nicer prison, like one of these camps that these rich people go in. So she got rewarded for this conversation. It's just ridiculous. And so let's go back to the CIA clown here. Maxwell, Trump was never inappropriate with anybody.
This point. But first, in terms of what is known and solidifying what is known, President Trump did absolutely nothing wrong. There's no evidence. There's no indication. There's nothing whatsoever to suggest.
He's shaking his head, this guy, Will, whatever his name is.
That President Trump ever did anything wrong with regard to all of this. So many of us have known that from just the case files and everything going back for quite some time. But she vociferously and repeatedly goes to that. OK, so people can put that aside now. I mean, I don't know how much more is going to be necessary for that to become. Look, there are people who will hate.
People put that aside. Trump said horrible things. The evidence is there. I presented, and I got an hour-long thing of just some of the evidence. Things he said, his what he's cheating on his wife, banging porn stars, groping young women, all the accusations of sexual abuse, women who came forward, people, these stories he tells, say he's attracted to his daughter, just all these things. He's shown what kind of person he is. He's a pig. He bought the beauty pageant so he could walk in their dressing rooms. All the things, the reports about him. So that's all evidence, right? That's observational evidence stories people have about him, things that he said himself about himself, and then all the evidence of him and Jeffrey Epstein being buddies, right? And he's trying to say that Ghislaine Maxwell has credibility. Of course, if she said Trump was guilty, they would say, well, this is the world's worst pedophile. How is she has no credibility. But why would you say that when Trump has a position of partner? And why would this guy, he's a CIA analyst, and he can't say she just got something from her testimony? She was in a better position now than she was before the testimony. And Todd Blanchett is not treating her like a fucking pedo recruiter, like the worst kind of a fucking woman, right? And the victims think of her worse than they think of Jeffrey Epstein. They were more scared of her. They were more mad at her than they were with Jeffrey Epstein. Like, she's the one who brought them in, encouraged them to bring in other young girls. Like, Jeffrey Epstein was hands off on a lot of these things. Like, she was the one that was doing it. Like, there's the grooming part of sexual abuse is often the worst part because of the breaking of the trust, right? The grooming takes place of somebody who's like that one girl, Virginia Giuffre, said she's like a Mary Poppins figure. You know, she's a little bit delightful, and she's got the accent, and she comes from money, and, you know, she knows how to be nice, like fake fucking royal people nice, and make it sound like, you know, we got something for it, and we have an opportunity for you, and lure you in and groom you and teach you what Jeffrey Epstein likes. It's fucking creepy as fuck, right? And so, like, why not bring the victims out and what they have to say about Trump and these things and all of it? And so, yeah, Trump is, you know, at the very least, he's complicit and he's doing his own thing. Maybe not with Jeffrey Epstein, but he's, you know, he's a pig, and he's all these things. And as a CIA person, oh, there's no evidence here. This puts this to rest. Yeah, you wish it did, right? But, you know, like, people aren't going to take the people who are Trumpers who are also want to get to the bottom of Epstein. And plus, Trump people told them a bunch of things that agreed with what they believed about Epstein. And now we're like, no, nothing to see here. There's no files. He did commit suicide, and there's nothing there. And Trump himself's not worried about the victims. Trump hasn't said one thing about the victims of Epstein. He has said one thing. He's always against victims. The same thing with the people in Gaza and any of these other places. You know, he cares about the hostages because those people are, you know, part of the group that handles him, Israel, and these, you know, financial institutions. But he cares about the Jewish hostages, but not about the Palestinian kids that were killed. They just have bad luck, right? Those guys.
Trump and try to lie about him no matter what. But I think that's affirmed now in a way that we can move beyond it. She also says, essentially...
So that's that, right? We can move beyond it.
Nobody else did anything wrong. She didn't see any, meaning other than Jeffrey Epstein, she didn't see any criminal conduct that Jeffrey Epstein even did herself. There is no blacklist. Now, that's always been a shorthand, and people talk about a blacklist. What they really mean is people who were blackmailed. But, Will, as I was going through the transcripts, she says there was no blackmail. She also says at all, of anyone.
But she's lying there. But when she tells the truth about Trump, we can put that behind us. She told us the truth. She didn't lie about the president, the one guy that can pardon her and give her, you know, all the things that she's gotten already, like a better prison deal. Like she's in a camp now. You know, but she had no reason to lie about Trump. But everything else, she's lying about. Like, what the fuck?
Also says that the money was made through high-stakes financial deals. What? There's some things here that just still don't add up, and I think...
Yeah, like she's lying about everything but Trump. She's lying about everything but Trump. Like, you piece of shit CIA fuck, you know? And these guys, like, they're just there. And imagine how dumb they think their fucking audience is, and how dumb their audience actually is. And so, this is what I was talking about in my introduction. Like, it's fucking hopeless, right? Like, if this is how fucking dumb people are, and, you know the truth. The truth is there. You know, like, my wife and I focused on this, you know, or something's killing our chickens. And it's a raccoon. We'll end up finding out. We'll find the raccoon. Like, it's just, like these are animals that'll come back, and when you're observing it, and this kestrel flew right over my head. Say, look at me, I'm eating your chicks, right? I'm here to eat your chicks. Like, it's just telling us, like, it's not. It might as well just have flew up to me and said, hey, I'm going to try to kill your chicks. And I had one yesterday, and now I'm going to do more. So, when you seek the truth, it comes to you. You concentrate on something, and the truth comes to you. You might not have evidence, you can't prove it, but you'll know. And, there's paranoid people, and there's people who suck at this, and I'm not talking about them. But if you have kind of, you develop your meditative abilities and your connection with God, and you need an answer, it comes to you. You have a spiritual Ethernet, and you ask God a question, and the answer will be revealed. But you have to be able to accept the answer. And Trumpers can't hear the answer being Trump's a piece of shit. And he played you, and he's like creepy. And he's always been creepy. He's always been elitist. He's the opposite of what you think he is. And so they'll ask for the truth for God, but say, if it's that, I can't handle it. I can't handle the truth. And so, this is where people are at. This shows you how bad it is. So the Democrats are going to release the names. Trump, I think I have some more stuff to do with John Bolton, but the news just said he's now going to go after Chris Christie, right? Trump just doesn't give a fuck, which is kind of funny, and I would have enjoyed it more the first term. But he's just going full Trump. He's, definitely taken down the presidency as a respectable, and all these conspiracy theories are coming right about martial law and, the deep state stuff, that are just now being run by Trump. But, and that's all good because it's a validation of what we've said for years. And, again, I'm a realist or a realityist. But, the truth community, at least the people that are good truthers, have been saying these things for years. And just it's happening under a guy that most of them backed, right? Most of these well-meaning truthers backed Trump, saying he's so much better than Kamala, but he's so much worse because he doesn't give a fuck, right? About public appearance. He doesn't give a fuck about decorum. He doesn't care about any of these things that, help keep a person from going full Trump, right? But in that, it's the people's ability, and it's really Trumpers, because everyone else knows what Trump is, and he's not running for re-election, so, it's his support system. And once he loses his base, the Republicans will devour him. Like if things turn on Trump, and they're a little bit hesitant, the Republicans, because Trump is capable of massive comebacks. But, I don't think so. And, his health is declining. He's got edema. He's swelling. There's, somebody sent me a video where they're saying that he's only got 6 months to live, which I doubt that's the case. But, he's got failing health issues, showing signs of, he's 80 years old. But in that, Melanie Stansberry.
Thousands of pages. In fact, it took a long time just to download.
Let's get all the way back here.
Thousands and thousands of pages. In fact, it took a long time just to download the documents themselves. Our understanding is that the Republican chairman, of course, Comer, who is an ally of Trump's, is in negotiations regarding when, how, and if certain documents would be released. And so in terms of timeline, it's hard to say at this moment. But I can tell you that House Democrats are committed to transparency, to justice, and to pursuing justice against any individuals who are identified in those documents, including the president, who may have committed crimes.
And Congressman, that's the point I think is important to not lose sight of, because this is where this
She's saying that they're going to release the names here.
whole thing began. Because, look, you can take it back to a little tweet from a guy named Elon Musk who said, oh, by the way, Donald Trump, you're in the Epstein files. And then the story just kind of rolled from there. So I don't think we should lose sight of that. Number two, we should not lose sight of the fact that this DOJ spent 2 days basically.
Anyways, it says here we will release names in Epstein files, including potentially. Well, let me just get to that point here.
Setting up a convicted pedophile so that she could get a nice little slide into a better prison situation and life, so that she could then also at the same time level up what we saw play out today. When you look at that and you juxtapose against the documents, admittedly, you have not had a chance to review the documents yet, got that. But this set of Epstein documents that are going to come in that you're going to be reviewing, where do you go? How do you begin to connect dots for the American people? And how much of that, to Elisa's point, are Democrats willing to put out on the street? Because you do have the power. Both the Republicans and the Democrats can decide whether or not they want to release what they want to release.
Well, I'll just say this for the Democrats. We are committed to full transparency and disclosure. So, let the chips fall where they may. If people have committed crimes, I don't care what letter is behind your name in terms of whether and how.
Yeah, you do. I mean, you guys will burn Bill Clinton to get Trump. They'll totally burn Bill Clinton to get Trump. But you're going to burn him. And no, Bill Clinton's not going to get burned. He's too old and too, and he's Trump's age, but he's faded. And, they could disappear Bill Clinton at any time because he's not even out really much in the public. But, they're going after Trump here because they never gave a shit about Epstein up until now. But they're saying,
you've served as a public official. The whole point of releasing these files is that the public is demanding to know if there are individuals in powerful positions who've committed crimes, especially against young women and children. And so it's our responsibility to justice and to the victims to release whatever names are in there, including potentially the president's.
Okay, so that's the big line here. And so, of course, this is what's going to happen. It isn't going to mean shit, but Trump's name's in there. And it's coming out. Like they kind of, the Maxwell thing was basically, well, yeah, Trump was friendly with them in a social setting, in a social way, nothing more than that. So there'll be, and of course, the Trumpers aren't deep thinkers. The people who like Trump aren't deep thinkers. Neither are the Democrats, obviously. So, this is what I'm talking about. Humanity's fucked, because people are, people just don't want to look at their own personal situation and give up the things that are hurting themselves and hurting other people. I worked as a counselor, as a preceptor for the Sajmark system, all these things. And, I've known this for years. People don't want to change. Changing a person is the hardest fucking thing. And you can't change somebody else. You can pressure them, but that usually results in them digging their heels in deeper. You can try to use force, like those Christians that bring gay people to those anti-gay farms, those, whatever, like the camps and the farms. They try to de-gay them at those, it doesn't work. You can't, people have to want to change stuff, whatever it is. I mean, that's like if people, and it's hard for people to change even if they want to. Lots of times people want to change, right? I mean, there was an example of this pedophile in a Washington, D.C. prison, I believe, somewhere there, or in that area. The guy was up for parole. So somehow he got a razor blade and an apple. And he bit the apple and he cut off his nuts in his prison cell because he didn't want to be a pedophile anymore. And he felt like if he got rid of his nuts, his sexual desires would go down. And he would, which is a commitment. Like you gotta, I'm not suggesting people do that, but it's, I'm not saying it's a horrible idea, like I'm not in any way suggesting that people should do that, but it makes sense as an idea, right? Just like The Purge kind of makes a little bit of sense, the Purge movies. But that's a way, and I'm not sure because it doesn't get rid of his deviant thoughts, but certainly the hormonal aspect of it, and they've talked about this kind of chemical castration or whatever. But, that's a commitment. That's somebody who really wants to change. A person who didn't want to be a pedophile anymore. And that's, he's making a statement. And, like people who want to change, cutting off your nuts, that's really, that's in terms of a commitment. So anyways, there's all that. Let's move on to let's see what's south. Let's move on to the next thing. Okay, so I couldn't find that news story, and I used ChatGPT, but I read this before a couple times. It's like a 20-year-old story, the one with the apple and the razor blade. But anyways, and Chris Christie thing hasn't popped yet. It was like one of those things, one of these like this down here, one of these little headlines that they put underneath the news. MSNBC admits it's not retribution. Of course it is.
This might have nothing to do with classified documents or about classified intelligence that Bolton printed in his book. Trump Justice Insider Mike Davis says Democrats, rhinos, and reporters who think this raid on John Bolton is about his book will be very embarrassed when the search warrant becomes public. Primetime's here.
Yeah, they're not going to be embarrassed. It's total, like, fucking, come on. Like, we know John Bolton goes on and criticizes Trump more than anybody else. You know, in terms of his, I mean, he's a regular on these CNN and MSNBC. And he used to not be because he was a neocon that used to be on Fox News. He used to be, celebrated on Fox News when Fox News was all about the neocons because that's where the Republican Party was at. And so everyone knows it's retribution. This is the exact thing that Trump was accused of, that Trump said was a witch hunt. And Trump, could have put Hillary Clinton away for the same thing. Like he said that he protected Hillary Clinton. I have that meme. I'm not going to show it here, but it's, he said he protected Hillary Clinton because he didn't think the first lady should go to jail. So he had her. He said, I had her dead to rights. She did all kinds of things, but I protected her. And so he's going after John Bolton for the thing that Joe Biden did and Trump did, mishandling of classified documents, right?
Bolton was making a lot of money from overseas and may have been trafficking in intelligence. That wouldn't be putting America first.
Maybe he was doing this. Like, this guy's told people, the Fox News, I mean, this is celebrating their piece of shitness today. Because that's not what happened here. This is a vindictive thing that Trump's doing.
Constitutional scholar Jonathan Turley, who we just heard from, says Bolton could be looking at up to 20 years in prison. So Bolton should take his own advice and take a big, beautiful, deep breath.
I think it's important that everybody take a deep breath here. This is...
I don't have a problem with John Bolton going away to prison for the rest of his years. He's a war hawk and a piece of shit. But what Trump is doing here, if John Bolton's the worst person in the world, he's the worst American, and he does these things, out of being vindictive, Trump, then it sets a precedent that he can do it to anybody else. If he's going to do it on Chris Christie, which, I'll cover tomorrow, I guess, because the video hasn't happened yet, but I guess Trump said this already, that he's going to go after Chris Christie next. Here's Chris Christie thing. I just watched sloppy Chris Christie. He wants to call him fat, but he calls him sloppy. Be interviewed on a ratings challenge news show the week with George Stephanopoulos. Slopadopoulos. He's such a child. Used to be great, but now, of course, it sucks. On ABC Fake News, by the way, what the hell happened to John Carl's hair? He looks absolutely terrible. It's amazing what bad ratings on a failed television show that was forced to pay me $16 million can do in one's appearance. Can anyone believe that sloppy Chris says? Do you remember the way he lied about the dangerous and deadly closure of the George Washington Bridge in order to stay out of prison, at the same time sacrificing people who worked for him, including the young mother who spent years trying to fight off this vicious charges against her? Chris refused to take responsibility for their criminal acts. For the sake of justice, and perhaps we should start looking at that very serious situation again. No one is above the law, right? So this was no one is above the law. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. So no one is above the law is what Kash Patel said about John Bolton. And so now they're starting, when Trump said that, let me show the Hillary Clinton thing after this, when I'm done with this, but he is saying these things in tweets, and then all of a sudden his Justice Department picks up on him and then starts investigating. And then Trump says, I don't know anything about it, right? Because he wants plausible deniability. But the fact that the Supreme Court ruled that the president can do whatever they want and never can be considered a criminal act means that people are above the law, right? And And all the people in the Epstein report above the law, he doesn't want that released. But he wants to go after Chris Christie here. So let me show you the Hillary Clinton meme.
Yeah, please. I don't think it's appropriate for me to talk about it. I think it's a tragic story.
This is about pardoning Hunter Biden.
You want to know the truth. And I felt that with Hillary Clinton, too. You know, with Hillary Clinton, I could have done things to her that would have made your head spin. I thought it was a very bad thing. Take the wife of a president of the United States and put her in jail. And then I see the way they treat me. That's the way it goes. But I was very protective of her. Nobody would understand that, but I was. I think my people understand it. They used to say, lock her up, and I'd say, just relax, please. We won the election. I think it would be I think it would have been horrible for our country and we had her between the hammering of all of the files. And don't forget, she got a subpoena from the United States Congress. And then, after getting the subpoena, she destroyed everything that she was supposed to get. I thought it was so bad to take her and put her in jail, the wife of a president of the United States, and then when it's my turn, nobody thinks that way. I thought it was a very terrible thing. And she did a lot of very bad things. I'll tell you what, she was pretty evil. But in terms of the country and in terms of unifying the country, bringing it back, to have taken her and to have put her in jail, and I think you know the things as well as I do. There were some pretty bad acts that she did. I think it would have been very bad for our country. And a lot of my people, a lot of the MAGA, as they call them, but the base. And I think the base is 75% of the country.
So this is Chris Christie's claim here.
That former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows didn't tell anyone. Listen to this.
If Mark Meadows knew that somebody that I was sitting across from for 4 days had popped a positive test, he, as the White House Chief of Staff, put aside the president for a second. Obviously, the president, as my friend, should have looked at me and told me that. That's obvious. But I think what's less obvious is that Mark Meadows saved this for his book.
Yeah.
He saved it for a book. He didn't tell us. I went into the hospital in the intensive care unit. He didn't call and tell me. So I think that's inexcusable.
You had always suspected that you got it from the president. Is that right?
Well, the only reason I suspected it was because he was the only person who I didn't know his testing regimen. I was in close contact with. All the other people, we spoke about the fact.
So did this confirm for you that you did, in fact, get it for the president?
Oh, I think it's undeniable.
Yeah. And I mean, you were very sick. You could have died.
Sure. So could he.
And the president knowingly walked in to work with you for 4 days without a mask and expose you to COVID. And then he went and met with Gold Star families.
Right. No, look, I'm not excusing any of it, but it's all brand new information to me, and I'm giving you what our raw reaction was. I was as close to him as you and I are to each other right now. I was playing Joe Biden. I was sitting right across from him, and we had some very spirited disagreements,
which you write about in the book
during the debate prep. So
okay, so there's another piece where he said Trump asked him to say that he got COVID from Chris Christie. I'm not sure where that is, but you know that whole thing. Which Chris Christie's obvious somebody with not good health. He's obese. He's older. It's the kind of person that, if he didn't have money, would have been put on a ventilator in New York City and Epstein. But, which I'm not laughing at, but that's what they were doing. I am laughing at, but not at the people who died. But this, let's see if it.
So saliva was flying back and forth between
particles.
The two of us.
COVID
right?
particles were going everywhere.
As it turned out, I didn't know that because I didn't have any COVID particles. And the reason I know is because I was tested every day before I went in. And by the way, 6 of the 7 of us in that room got it.
Yeah.
Hope, Hicks, Bill Stepien, Kellyanne Conway, me, Stephen Miller, and Donald Trump all wound up with COVID in that room.
Joining me
So somewhere
now is CNN political commentator.
All right, so there's that. I don't know where the other video disappeared to, but Chris Christie did a town hall. Let me see if I can find that one. Okay, so I found this clip here. there was another clip I can't find, and CNN, I had a headline about this. He wrote this in his book. He put this in his book, so Trump could have sued him for, what defamation like Trump does, right? But he didn't. But there was some kind of town hall, and it's funny how these things disappear. This was when he was running for president last year, but this is basically the same thing that he said here, that he said that I watched before in a different venue.
He said, well, he called, and I write this in the book, and after asking how I was feeling and going through that and a couple of things about, how did tough guys like us get this and all that, he then got to, he said,
wait, do you guys think you're tough guys? Chris Christie, Doughboy Chris Christie, and fucking Trump, they both did a couple of tough guys. Tough guys.
Things about, how did tough guys like us get this and all that. He then got to, he said, how do you think you got it? So I said, well, I don't know how exactly. There were 7 of us in that room, and 6 of the 7 of us got it. So I said, I don't know how I got it, but I got it in that room for
Probably
sure.
Probably from individual one.
Well, and he said, well, that got to the next question, which he said to me, you're not going to blame me, are you?
Oh.
And I said to him, well, I won't, because I don't know that you gave it to me. It could have been Hope, it could have been Bill, it could have been Kellyanne. I don't know who it was. But what he was most concerned about was that I wasn't going to blame him.
Yeah.
And so, a real contrast, by the way, Sonny, to his wife, who called me every day that I was in the ICU first thing in the morning to see how I was doing, and then would call my wife after that to see if she needed anything.
Wow.
A real contrast between the couple.
Well,
Okay, so the other interview that I saw, which again disappeared. I don't know why it would disappear, and I could search ChatGPT. It's not that important. But then Trump came out and blamed him. Trump blamed him. Trump said, he blamed him. It's like a town hall when Chris Christie was running for president. This video is actually older, and they've buried that clip. It seems like a lot of these Trump clips are disappearing. I have no idea why. I mean, obviously, Trump doesn't want them out there. But why would YouTube be censoring some of these things? There was a clip I saw yesterday where, I showed the clip, but it's a clip of some Trump saying that he hired 16-year-old girls, right? And these things are just disappearing. And you can't, they're there and you can't find them because the search engine and AI won't let you find them, which is kind of fucked up. But anyways, let's get back to the video here. Okay, so while I was finishing up this video, editing this video, I searched with ChatGPT and Grok and Gemini. They couldn't find the video clip I was looking for. It's in one of my videos, but I have no idea. I could search my videos, but I'll do that next and see if I can find something. But anyways, I don't need it. Only if it's in the title I'll be able to find it. It probably wasn't. But here's Trump doubled down here. And
Mr. President, do you plan to investigate Chris Christie?
Say what?
Do you plan to investigate Chris Christie?
Look, Chris is a slob. Everybody knows it. I know Chris better than anybody in the room.
I know him better than anybody in the room, that slob. Me and him are best buddies like me and Jeffrey Epstein. And that's, when you look at Trump's friends, they all turn on him. He turns on them. He turns on them. But Chris Christie was one of his friends, just like Jeffrey Epstein was.
I always felt he was guilty. But what he did is he took the George Washington Bridge, which is very serious. He closed down the George Washington Bridge. And you had medical people, you had ambulances caught up. This thing was closed down. And obviously he knew about it. But he blamed the young lady that worked for him and another person, and they got into a lot of trouble. She ultimately was, I don't know, exonerated, but she got out of it a little bit. But she went through hell. She was a young mother, nice person. I knew her a little bit. And another man went to jail.
She wasn't a slob.
And Chris got off. And so when I listen to Chris speak his hate, I say, oh, what about the George Washington Bridge? Tell me about the George Washington Bridge.
His hate about Trump. That's what he's talking about. So when he says his hate, when he's hating on me, I'm like, well, hey, let's investigate this motherfucker now that I'm going after people that criticize me.
he blamed other people, but he knew all about it. So no, I don't know if they want to look at it. It's not for me. If they want to look at it, they can. You could ask Pam. I think we have other things to do, but I always thought he got away with murder.
Yeah, why would you? You know, I mean, you like to make sure people in power are held accountable, like all your buddies and Bill Clinton and you yourself for Jeffrey Epstein. But no, let's bring up something nobody gives a shit about, and bring that up now that Ghislaine Maxwell has vindicated you. What a piece of shit this motherfucker is. Okay, let's see here.
In D.C., a source tells CNN the searches are part of a national security investigation related to Bolton's book released back in 2020 and whether John Bolton disclosed classified information outside of his book. Bolton served as the national security advisor in President Trump's first term. He has since become a vocal critic of the president. Just minutes ago, the president delivered his first public reaction to the search. Listen.
I know nothing about it. I just saw it this morning. They did a raid.
I know nothing about it. You know, we all know that Trumpers, these taint lickers, don't do anything that displeases Trump. And they're pretty sure and clear that the one thing that they have to do to keep their job is to make Trump happy and do his agenda. Right? Like, that's just obvious. Everyone knows it. And Trump always is saying, I didn't hear about that. I'm just hearing about that from you. Why don't you tell me about it? Like, he doesn't know what's going on in his government. You know, this is a big news story, and he knows nothing about it. Like, you know, he totally wants it. They're not doing it because I'm pissed off that they're doing this. My good friend John Bolton. I mean, he's just talking about Chris Christie in a tweet in a Truth on Truth Social, you know, which is hilarious because it's Trump's one of the biggest liars, and they're all fucking, delusional. But, Chris Christie gets investigated next week. I don't know anything about it. I don't know why they're doing that. Like fucking silly. It's just plausible deniability. And even with he's got immunity because he's president, and the Supreme Court ruled that a president can't commit a crime. This is how fucked up this is, right? So this is more Fox News here.
Sweet.
Excellent. Well, we hope also you may get into the fact that the FBI believes that John Bolton should face charges over alleged email classified documents. Obviously,
in other news,
saw the raids at his home and his office. A senior FBI official on the raid, New York Post, we have this quote saying the Biden administration had probable cause to know that he had taken material that was detrimental to the national security of the United States. They made no effort to retrieve it. That was a friendly administration to Bolton. They kept bashing Trump the entire time for weaponizing law enforcement, and they, by politically stopping a righteous investigation, are the ones who weaponized law enforcement. What are your thoughts?
Well, I thought it was interesting in this piece. So, senior FBI official talking reportedly to the New York Post.
It sounds like a Trump person, not an FBI official. It sounds like a Trump person using Trump language, almost like Trump himself.
They said that this case is entirely separate from a case that was opened involving whether there was classified information or violation of an NDA for his 2020 book. Because there was some reporting on Friday, we thought, this connected this raid back to that book? But this reporting is saying it's something entirely separate. It's over an alleged emailing of highly sensitive classified materials through a private server. So that's
so the exact thing that Hillary Clinton was accused of and Trump protected her from. And then all these other things that Trump's done and Biden's done. But all of a sudden, this is like, they're really going to, we're really fucking making sure this gets done. Finally, right? That somebody gets busted for leaking classified information. Again, Bolton is a piece of shit. Like, just like the guy, his porn stash, his mannerisms, his, all the warmongering he's done. He's one of these neocons. And yet, this is not about that. If Trump starts doing this to people individually and just targeting people and making up bullshit and investigating, harassing them, bullying them with his power, where they have no way of retaliating because he's a little bitch, right? Then this could happen like in mass. He's already doing it to anybody who's considered an illegal alien. I mean, he's just, the hostile nature of his government And then the martial law stuff in D.C. that nobody wants. It's a nightmare. Like Trump is becoming a dictator, just like the Democrats said. You know, I had Trump pegged from the very beginning, if you watch my earlier videos, because I watched The Apprentice. I knew what kind of guy he was, and I thought it was great, because he was going to make an embarrassment and mockery of the presidency. And it would be funny, it's hard to laugh with this guy at this point, because he's so sucky, right? It's like Kanye was funny, until Kanye just went, like, you know, he just went over the top. He just lost it. And he started the stuff with his wife and dressing her, you know, bringing her naked through the streets, you know, whatever it is that he does. I mean, that weird shit in his relationship, you know, like those things. It's just like somebody pushes the performance art too far. You know, I like trolling. Trolling is great. But there's kind of there's a point where it becomes inappropriate. And so, you know, Trump trolling the whole government and showing that, like, what the president really is and who a president really is, and showing them what a scumbag he is, and therefore being more honest about what all of these presidents and politicians are, used to be good. But now, of course, it isn't, which I've talked about already. So here's a video of Trump having trouble walking. You know, and I said this about Joe Biden. You could see it initially when he was running for president in 2019. Like, he's having trouble walking in a straight line, Trump. But, like, there's all these pictures now of his hands being swollen, these discoloration. I'm not going to cover it here because whatever. Just the effort to validate all the pictures, and, you know, I mean, anything could be made to look worse. But he's an old guy. He's in his 80s, doing a hard job, right? You know, people retire when they're 65 and, you know, on up. And certainly in their 70s, how many people got jobs in their 70s that are like real jobs? It's only these people who are really wealthy, you know, people who control, like Jerry Jones of the Dallas Cowboys, who's imploding right now because he's been battling cancer for like 10 or 15 years, and he's, you know, senile, and he's always been kind of an arrogant prick and a I want to do it my way kind of guy. And so, you know, these guys who run companies long after they're past their prime and nobody can talk to them, and they often run their companies into the ground. And they don't want to retire because they have nothing else. Like, this is all they've ever done. This is all who they are as a person. And there's no retirement. They're not people who retire. I mean, Trump does like to play golf and do those things, so I don't know for him, but, you know, he'll always be doing business deals and these things till the day he dies, because that's all he knows, right? And as soon as people quit their work, they fall apart. And I talk about that quite often. You know, I was making reference to this earlier about my particular content here. And, you know, I just have a more practical way of sensing the truth, because I don't have a dogma. Like, I don't have the truth or dogma anymore of the truth or mantras of, you know, all the truthers believe in a certain thing. You know, there's this woman who, I went to this School of Human Services to get my bachelor's degree, and it was a lot of people. You could get credit for work that you'd done. Like, it was an adult level course, Springfield College School of Human Services in Massachusetts. And there are a lot of people who came in from New York and New Jersey who worked in the prison system, and, you know, the school is on weekends. And there was a woman there. She had just purchased a house. You know, so someone I was friends with, you know, we had, you know, breaks for lunch. So we would, you know, people we would connect with, we would talk during lunch. And this woman had bought a house because she was making a lot of money as a prison guard. And she lived in one of those neighborhoods in New York where the neighbors were always, you know, really big on keeping their property and their sidewalks, you know, clean, and just all the, you know, these people take pride in their houses. And she said that when it would snow, you would hear one shovel, somebody shoveling. You'd hear the sound of a shovel hitting the sidewalk, and then within 2 minutes, the whole neighborhood, everyone was out shoveling their, you know, this kind of thing, keeping up with the Joneses. And there's a lot of that in science. I've talked about that in science. There's a lot of that in the truth community, and these narratives that exist, and everybody adheres to these narratives. And I don't do that because, you know, I'm not. I mean, I realized early on that people weren't properly vetting these narratives, that somebody would say something without, it could be disinformation agent or just some dumbass talking some shit, and nobody had ever researched it or looked into it, right? And so, that's what I've learned, things that make my content more valuable, and I'm just better at kind of having a sense of things because of the, I'm an incompetent person. I was an underachieving person before I started doing the meditation, but the meditation has enhanced my ability to see the truth and just, understand things. And, when you include God in your decision making, it changes everything. And it certainly reflects here in my videos. But people don't want that shit. People just want to believe in these bullshit theories. And, you have people who root for a team or root for a person or player or celebrity. And when the truth comes out, they just don't want to deal with it, right? People want to hear about their demographic. People don't want to face the truth about the things that they identify with. I've seen this over and over again. And people who have picked Trump and, Trump is their hope, no matter what happens, like Trump said, he could shoot somebody in the face at Fifth Avenue. I mean, he's going to survive this Jeffrey Epstein thing with his base, because where else are they going to go? They're a bunch of dumb fucks who have a warped sense of reality, and there's only one guy who's ever flirted with them and told them that they were great, even though he's not like them at all. He's a part of the elite that they hate. He's the opposite of the guy that he thinks they are. He at least has acknowledged them. It's like some wallflower at a dance and somebody smiles at her, or some guy, who's some loser, some girl smiles at him or something. He thinks that, I mean, it's like she's giving him the keys to the kingdom, right? And so, this desperate group of people are just wanting somebody to acknowledge them and validate their beliefs. And Trump's done that, even though it's bullshit. And so this is where we're at. And, across the board. And so, you don't get credit for telling the truth is what I'm saying, or seeking the truth. And certainly you don't get credit for including God in any of these things because, the way that the system is rigged against that shit. Anyways, let's go to the next thing here. So Elon Musk retweeted this. I don't know who Tim Pool is, but he has a check mark. I think I've heard of him. The Timcast. I think he's that clown. I think he's a Trumper. He's a right-wing piece of shit. The population isn't collapsing. It has collapsed. The shoreline is receding, and no one understands the tsunami about to hit us. As U.S. population goes, it will be impossible to redevelop. Automation won't replace your customers. This is stuff we've known for a while, and these right-wing pieces of shit. This guy defended Trump. He sucks. And, Elon is whatever he is, He's a nightmare. But, these things that are there for people to see, that the system is fucked, like we are fucked. And the people who run the system know. They see the numbers. They just won't acknowledge it because they don't want to create panic, which is their job. I don't blame them for that. Because we saw the way people panicked over COVID. The grocery stores were empty and the banks you didn't have any more cash. I mean, it was crazy. And that was just bullshit COVID stuff. I mean, COVID was real, but it wasn't, nearly as bad as they made it, right? And it really, they did almost had to do nothing. Just let people get it. And, I recovered at home and I had a moderate to severe case. But, some people are going to die from it just because they had no immune system and they're in really poor health. Like the flu, people die from the flu, but the flu isn't really fatal. It's because you're really weak. It's like, an animal that can no longer fight off its adversaries or its, whatever it is, rivals, like a lion, beat up old lion. Something that's weakened, like your immune system's weak, and you just can't fight things off anymore. I mean, that's what COVID was taking out. People who were so medicated and so obese and so, poor health and so immune compromised that they were going to die from whatever, the flu, any kind of severe illness is going to take them out. Or just, a hard illness to fight off. But, it would sweep through the population, and the overpopulation is a big problem in the world. And, population growth is going to subside at some point, which everyone is, just has to, and it's necessary. But anyways, these are things that we've known for a long time. And when you know these things, it's not like, oh, we better do something about them. It's, well, we can't do anything about any of this stuff. And we can't fix all these problems. So that means our system is going to collapse. And deal with it. Like, how do you deal with that, right? How do you effectively deal with that as a person? And that's what I cover here. But people don't want to, the people are just going to wait till it happens and try to figure things out when they're in complete panic mode. People are not preparing for what's about to happen. And certainly spiritually the most important way. But that's, that's humanity. Humanity does shit like that, right? This is what people do. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about martial law and grooming tomorrow in the beginning of my next video. I'm not going to do it here. I think it's important enough to talk about in a specific, introduction to the video. This thing I was just talking about in terms of the population, there are things that inevitably happen. Like if a species gets overpopulated, they are at the most risk to be extinct. Because when they get overpopulated, they get crazy and suicidal, and they eat all their food, and they create toxic waste that, kills them, makes them sick, and all these things. And, we're at that stage. There's lots of indicators of apocalypse that are afoot right now. And, the number one is that people just are unbelievably degraded. And that's what I've been talking about. Like, you just can't trust people to, let me just check to see if a kestrel's killing my chickens. Okay, it's not. I went out, I cut a path behind the chicken house so we can where the chicks are. And, I've been aware of the kestrel, and I went shopping, so I kept the chicks in the coop until I got back. And I just took a nap. And while I was talking, I could hear this. We have this hawk that we call Screech, and it just is constantly droning on and screeching and flying and screeching and flying. The yellowtail hawks, there's this bug on me. Jesus Christ. The red-tail hawks are constantly being chased by the red-winged blackbirds when they're hatching out chicks. But then the red-winged blackbirds leave, and the hawks are very prevalent, and they're flying over our pasture. And our neighbors on either side will hay. They have horses, so they'll cut hay. They have some fields of hay, and when they cut the hay, it exposes all the rodents and things, and then all of a sudden the birds of prey will show up like the kestrels. And so we had 2 kestrels when I was coming home from shopping, I saw. And so I'm having to be aware, mentally in touch with the chicks. And I heard the hawk, but I wasn't sure if it was the hawk. So I went outside to make sure the kestrel was in here. Anyways, it wasn't. To make a long story short, which is too late for that. But you can't trust people to make the right decisions or the higher decisions. You can't trust people. And it's not that they won't at times, but more often than not, they take the low path or even won't understand things. And, people aren't really wanting to hear the truth. And, everyone's in denial about what's happening right now. Because, I would say even myself, and I don't give a shit about this, but it's, I think I'll be shocked when it really starts going down. Even though I'm totally aware of it, it would make total sense to me, and I totally see it coming. It's a shock because it's such a drastic change. And when American life is different now, but it's not significantly like a slap in the face. Things have just eroded over time. But when things just completely break down, and I've talked about changes technologically, when things completely break down, then that'll be like when there's like, wow, this is our new life now. And a lot of stuff is just ideal. Like, I can't believe Joe Biden is senile and our president. I can't believe that someone like Trump got elected, this kind of thing. And there are some changes to some people's lifestyle, but for the most part, everything's kind of the same. It's just the rhetoric is different. And, when it goes full martial law and you see these things, and people in Washington, D.C., when they walk around, they see troops on the street. For them, it's different, right? When people start seeing these things. And, it's going to happen because there's no way to avoid it. Because it's already something that's happened in the future. Like, it's already part of the plan or part of the story. Anyways, let me wrap this one up here, and I'll cover more tomorrow. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely pointing for the apocalypse. And the ascension, everyone have a blessed day, and be grateful.